better served having someone who has never held office in the state or someone who is a career politician?
Now, how do you think we're going to answer that question, respectively? And I would certainly say that the term career politician is kind of interesting. I mean, I've practiced law most of my career, serving part-time in the Louisiana legislature, and hardly considered that a career. My position now has given me, or my background has given me, coupled with the position I seek, I hope, expertise to do things wisely and appropriately for Louisiana. It's very interesting when you're running for the first time to say anybody who's holding office is a career politician. I have done this in the spirit of public service, and I've done it with a record of integrity and effectiveness and doing everything I can possibly do to move Louisiana forward. And I'm proud of that, and I hope people are going to recognize that as they look at the obvious political attack that attempts to say, well, you're a career politician. Caroline's been given to politicians since she was 15 or 16 years old. She's had a long time interest in politics as well.
Yeah, this is for me to answer, right? Okay. In some respects, I'm totally confused because we've heard on one hand that we're going to continue to be a full-time Secretary of State and give our all, which of course would be a career politician. On the other hand, we hear that there are a bunch of other careers that we do on the side out there that they don't really matter and there's no conflict of interest. I can tell you this. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I think that probably is the best way to answer your question.
It could be said with some confidence that neighboring states such as Texas, Mississippi, and also Alabama have outperformed our state of Louisiana in luring new business and manufacturing projects, which in turn, of course, grows the economy. What can Louisiana do to better compete for these companies and the jobs that they bring?
Well, first and foremost, we have to stop gutting our higher education institutions. What we do right now is we try and get students in here, but then they have no jobs to go to once they graduate and they end up leaving the state. But it's hard to ask a business to locate here if there's nothing for their people to do, either in the cultural arena, which we have pretty well covered, but there's no place for their children to grow and learn and be productive citizens. In terms of particularly the jobs that we have lost, they're very hurtful and acute. We're in some discussions right now with the repurposing of Avondale shipyards, but a lot of those jobs are just being taken from Louisiana and moved to Mississippi. There's a lot of politics that go behind that. The current administration, the Secretary of the Navy, Roy Mavis, was involved in that, and he's the former governor of Mississippi. Those are people that we need to be talking to in Louisiana, and we have to make sure that when we are talking to them, we're doing so with an eye to what is best for the future of Louisiana over, our personal political persuasions. It's definitely a competitive world out there, and we need to be innovating and leapfrogging every step of the way.
Okay. I think you have to have a very targeted and smart balance between going after large projects like we've recently seen with Nucor, with a huge amount of state investment and trying to get them to Louisiana, and going in and reinvesting in small businesses in Louisiana, because small business is always the backbone of a state's economy. And you've got to make certain that you have a targeted plan directed toward creating opportunities and a trained workforce for a small business to flourish. That's why it's so important to go back to education. We finally reached the point where we were paying our teachers at the Southern average. We finally reached the point where we had gotten higher education to a level where it was fully funded. We've retracted from that now with these purported budget cuts. That's why they need to end, because the key is to creating an educated workforce and creating educational opportunities for people who are seeking to develop businesses here. But let's not forget those businesses that are here and may seek to expand and want to grow their own fortunes and as well Louisiana's economy.
Well, let's divert a little bit from the line of questioning that we've had here, in which I've been guilty of, and let's actually ask a question about the Lieutenant Governor's office. A perennial question that comes up is that there are state museums and facilities that fall underneath the Lieutenant Governor's jurisdiction, and there's also a set that fall underneath the Secretary of State. And the question that comes up every so often is, should there be a merger of these, and would we be more efficient and would be able to focus our tourism efforts better if we were to have a consolidation of these?
I think you'll see that discussion taking place in the next several months. It began last year. It's been going on for quite some time now, and I've been right in the middle of it, of course, as the Secretary of State. And my answer, and we discussed this several times during the campaign, is that we have to make certain we don't threaten the accreditation of the museums that are under the Louisiana State Museum system, because all of them are accredited, and with that brings certain standards and certain benefits from a relationship with the national organization and so on. The museums under the Secretary of State system are not accredited, but for one. And so any discussion has to begin, can we make certain we can continue the accreditation process? I think there would be some, not huge dollars, but some economy of scale benefit that you would realize by a consolidation. I think that discussion needs to take place. You're not going to see wholesale savings unless you close museums, but we've been able to run our museums with only 3 people in executive position. I've spent a lot of time with them, several of the people on my staff. We've done it very efficiently and effectively, and have created a linkage between the systems that I want to see continue.
Can you tell us which office you want to consolidate them under?
Well, I want that discussion to take place. I think, frankly, they're probably better under the Lieutenant Governor's office because, and even if I'm Secretary of State, I would say this, in the context of developing a cohesive plan for marketing all of them together, if you can get over the accreditation issues.
I think the jury is still out on consolidation. I think that there are issues between the different properties. The Louisiana State Museum system has very unique, significant properties that are, in many respects, larger in scale and cost more money to run, not to mention the accreditation issue vis-a-vis some of the others that are under the Secretary of State's rubric right now. I've talked to many people that are involved in museums, and more importantly, just the cultural economy. And it's something that worries people on both sides of the aisle, because sometimes consolidation is not the cost savings that we think it can be. You can look at other examples of some consolidated parish governments. A good example is the reorganization of the TSA and Homeland Security and FEMA all under one rubric, which certainly hurt Louisiana in our hurricane response. So I would be hesitant to make a recommendation, having not fully studied the issue and also talked in partnership with the people that actually run these museums on a daily basis.
Okay. Now we're going to throw in one extra candidate-on-candidate question. Okay? Jay, your question for Caroline.
Well, Caroline, let me give you the same one you gave me. What would be your priorities?
Well, first and foremost, because of where we are dealing with the effects of the moratorium and still the oil spill, and the current Lieutenant Governor, Scott Angel, has done a wonderful job, I think, of addressing this problem. You would have to come in as Lieutenant Governor and continue to address and go into triage mode. But secondly, I'd like to come up with an idea to continually to link North and South Louisiana. The I-49 cultural corridor, the completion of I-49 and looking at the benchmarks along those communities is something I see as a growth area for the state of Louisiana in the cultural economy industry. The third thing that I would be interested in reviving and revitalizing and making sure that it stays preeminent is the Main Street program, which links our local communities. The Main Street designation is a carrot, a jewel in the crown of these local communities, and we need to make sure that it links them appropriately.
Jay, your rebuttal.
And I like the fact that you picked up on the phrase I've used about linking North and South Louisiana, because it's absolutely something we have to do, and it's something I've been doing as Secretary of State with these museums. There's an imaginary dividing line, it seems, at I-10, and we've got to erode that in order to make certain that we can collectively sell Louisiana. And that's why I think it's so important to have an overall plan for tourism, a plan for blending our greatest resources, food, music, and the arts, into that plan, and roll that into an educational program in schools to ensure that students are continually trained in the arts and in music. That's what I want to see happen.
Okay. Now, Caroline, your question for Jay.
Jay, according to your commercial, you said that you would work with Bobby Jindal to help sell Louisiana. But on one hand, Bobby Jindal, as it brought up, Governor Jindal is in favor of eliminating this position. So how would you be able to work with him for a position that he is seeking to eliminate?
Well, I don't think he'll be seeking to eliminate the position anymore, frankly. And he said he did so this time because it was vacant and he was going to make a run at it. But we obviously have a lot of philosophical connections that will let us work together very well. We believe in less government. We believe in doing more with less. We believe in trying to find ways to make government more efficient. And I can assure you I will be working with him to promote Louisiana and convince him that the investment in our efforts for tourism and promotion of Louisiana are going to pay great dividends in the future. So I think we'll have a very good working relationship, and I look forward to that.
It would be my goal to work with anyone to build Louisiana versus sell Louisiana or sell Louisiana out. I believe that that's happened many, many times in our state's history, and it's time to make a change. When it comes to growing the state and our economic opportunities, the Lieutenant Governor needs to work in partnership with anyone to do so, and I do recognize that the Governor is there, and hopefully we'll have a conversation about that as well.
Thank you. And now we'll have a a round of rapid-fire questions coming from Stephen. He will give 4. You have 15 seconds maximum to answer.
President Barack Obama's health care plan, is it good or bad for Louisiana?
Starting with Caroline.
I think it's a net positive for Louisiana. I think that we have the highest infant mortality, second highest, that's a good number, in the country. I think the plan is not 100% perfect, and I would point out, however, that it's not just President Barack Obama's health care plan. It was voted on by members of the House and Senate, so it's really the country's health care plan.
Well, I won't be so defensive of the president. It's a disaster. 47 or more percent of the people in Louisiana are going to be Medicaid eligible. It is a disaster for Louisiana, and it's a disaster for America. And it's a bad policy move that is not going to help our state or our nation.
Do you believe global warming is a serious issue for the state?
I think global warming is an issue not only for the state, but with everyone. I think the constant debate that rages about the source of global warming is going to continue until we have some hard scientific evidence of what the cause is. But absolutely, I think it's an issue that people are going to have to be concerned about.
Yes, global warming and climate change, however rubric you want to put onto it, we need to learn to respect our environment. Here in Louisiana, particularly, we're subject to higher and higher sea rise levels, as also a warming Gulf, which creates hurricane problems for us. So it's something we need to put our attention to.
Would you support a pardon for former Governor Edwin Edwards?
Isn't he getting out very soon? That's kind of outside the scope of the Lieutenant Governor's office. I would support whatever recommendation those in charge, the Board of Pardons, which my family member was a former chairperson of, would make.
Well, it wouldn't be the Louisiana Board of Pardons that would do that, but the answer is no.
And who's your favorite Louisiana politician in the past?
I'm sorry.
Jay, who's your favorite political politician from Louisiana's past?
Henson Moore, who was elected to Congress about the time that I first got interested in politics, and consider him a tremendous public servant for Louisiana.
I would say John Breaux. I think his history of working across the aisle and building consensus and representing all of Louisiana is something to be deeply respected.
Okay. Now, at this time, we're going to allow for a 2-minute closing, and from the drawing, we see that Caroline goes first. Caroline, you